Hello YouTube and welcome, my name is Zadarkus and in today's video I'm going to tell you how to climb out of bronze and iron really fast if you follow this guide. I know that playing in the lowest ranks of the ladder can be frustrating, however you can always climb out of the divisions if you really know what you can do. Now we're going to look in depth into this, and of course there's a lot of ground to cover, but if you want to know what's going to be in this video, here is a rundown of what's important. Just remember, if you are tired of seeing your rank being iron, bronze or maybe even silver, I want to assure you, you found the right video. Now let's jump into it. The first thing is that you need to know your role. It's important to train your own champions and understand them, but what really makes it in Ranked is understanding your role and what you are supposed to do in the game. Getting kills of course is amazing, but it only helps if it translates to a long-term gain for your team. There's no point in getting kills if you're not gonna use them and help your team achieve victory. Different roles in the game have very different playstyles and require different mindsets. Basically, mid laners and AD carries focus on the laning phase to secure their items and provide damage later on. Top laners and junglers provide lane pressure and early map control. Supports protect their AD carries from pressure, help to get and secure kills, and peel for the priority targets. Later in the game, they are a key element for map control and vision, as they are the ones that can ward and control the vision the most. Under each role there are further different playstyles that have to be kept in mind. Some champions provide early games while others scale into the late game but are weak early. This should show you how aggressive or passive you should be in different moments in the game. For example, in the top lane, Riven is very aggressive and she wants kills early on because that's the point she is strongest, is in the early and mid game, while Nasus wants to farm up and stack his Q so he can be a monster in the late game. In a jungle situation, Lee Sin wants to gank early and be aggressive early to snowball his team and get a lot of kills, while Amumu wants to farm up and be strong in late game team fights thanks to his tankiness and overall CC. In the mid lane, Zed or Talon for example want to get kills early, snowball and roam to help the team, while Anivia needs farm and wants to be a monster in team fights in the late game. When it comes to AD carries, Vayne wants to farm a lot so she can scale to the hyper carry she is and carry in the late game, while for example Draven wants to bully from the early game on and just snowball early and mid game. If you understand this, you will be able to understand the champion you're playing, your teammates are playing and the enemy is playing, and by that adapt your game strategy the perfect way so you can get the most out of your composition against the enemy composition and know when you are the strongest or the weakest and therefore get the advantage in the game. The next key step is farming, and I cannot stress how important farming is. Getting more gold than your opponent will allow you to buy items before them. This means you should get used to last hitting minions to earn gold as soon as possible. Remember that every minion you fail to last hit will keep you longer for getting the items you want and the power spikes you need. The best way to practice last hitting is to go to the practice tool without any opponents and just last hit until the 5-minute mark and then reset again and again. Once you get a steady, good CS count of 40 or more, then try to play against the AI so you can also feel comfortable last hitting under pressure. Once you get steady against bots, start going for normal games to practice even further so you can always have a good CS count no matter what situation. You should also practice last hitting under the turret because this is going to happen a lot in your games and is a key skill you should practice. In case of minions in full HP, melee take 2 tower hits and 1 auto attack, casters take 1 turret hit and 2 auto attacks, while canyon minions take 4 tower hits and 2 auto attacks. Of course casters, once you have more attack damage, you let the tower hit and you just attack once, and the same goes for canyon minions. At lower ranks it's pretty common to just keep auto-attacking minions because it's easier, but this is actually a wrong move, as it keeps pushing the lane closer to the enemy territory, making it easier for you to get ganked or maybe just engaged by the enemy laner. Make sure you only try to last hit so you can freeze the minion lane in the current position until you are ready to actually push. Now let's talk about positioning and trading, because in lower elos team coordination basically doesn't exist. Winning or losing your lane will normally decide the outcome of the match. With this, you should always strive to win the laning phase. This is where positioning and trading will play a very important role. Positioning, basically where you should be in the situation you are in the game. For example, if you're playing support Morgana, you want to place yourself in a spot where your Dark Binding, your Q, is not blocked by the enemy minions, while still having your AD carry in range of your Black Shield, your E. This will force the enemies to back off because they can get rooted and take extra damage, putting them in a further disadvantage. Another good example of positioning is actually zoning the enemy outside of the range of experience when the minions die. You can see me doing it in this video, and thanks to that I'm going to get experience advantage and of course level advantage. Now trading, it's a bit more complicated, but it goes hand in hand with proper positioning if you want to win the laning phase. Simply put, trading refers to one or more champs dealing damage and receiving it back. It is basically a trade of important resources: HP, mana and cooldowns. You need two things at least to trade well: better stats by having better items or a higher level, and proper positioning, which will help you hit your abilities and auto attacks while taking back as least as possible. A good example is if the enemy has an ability that can be blocked by a minion and you trade with him but he can't actually hit you back. Another very important factor in trading is knowing your champion and the champion you are against. If you don't have any lifesteal or way to get HP back, but you're facing, let's say, a Tryndamere that has lifesteal and a Q that gives the HP back, you should keep in mind that even if you deal a little bit more damage, you are going to lose the trade overall because he's gonna get his HP back up. Choosing when to trade is also very important. There are a lot of things you should keep in mind to when and how you should trade. So here are some tips to when you should actually trade. The enemy is going for a last hit and it's in range of your ability or auto attack. The enemy is pushing towards you, but your jungler is also coming to gank and cut their retreat. You or a teammate has crowd control abilities ready that will help you win the fight. You know that some of his key abilities are on cooldown while you have yours up. A great example is a ultimate in the mid lane. Lastly, you're trading close to minions, but you have a big minion advantage, so he's going to take a lot of damage from those minions. Knowing at least these basic scenarios, make sure you don't get yourself on the other side of the situation to minimize the risk of the enemy getting good trades. Now, obtaining information. One of the biggest reasons why bronze, iron, silver or even higher players keep losing is for the lack of information. A lot of game-ending ambushes could be prevented by just knowing where the enemy is. There are three things related to that info that you have to prioritize in bronze and iron: learning to check the minimap, planting wards, and keeping track of the enemy's abilities and summoner cooldowns. If there is one thing that will help you survive ganks more often, is the habit of looking at the minimap every few seconds. Even a quick glance at the minimap should tell you some of the following: who is still in their lane, who's alive or is still waiting to spawn, are there enemies on your way, and which jungle camp, especially both Dragon and Rift Herald, are up. Just seeing an enemy going towards your lane will allow you to go back, be safe and not get ganked and killed. You can also decide to push if you see that everything around you is clear of enemies. If you have a teammate coming towards your location, you can prepare for a gank. One trick that you can use to get yourself used to look at the minimap is using a recurring timer. By setting your timer to beep once every 10 seconds or more frequent because it's better, you'll soon be able to check the minimap like it's a second nature and you won't need the annoying beep beep every 10 seconds. Then we get warding. Proper warding will drastically increase your chance of winning because it gives your team more time to react to the enemy plays. A good rule of thumb is to use up your remaining gold after you buy your items, so you can buy a pink ward. Sure, a couple of wards may send you back 150 gold, but 2 wards could keep you from dying to an otherwise avoidable gank. You can also use this ward more aggressively into the enemy's territory, the enemy's jungle, and thanks to that you can actually be aggressive yourself. You can actually ambush the enemy team instead of being ambushed yourself. Let's say you have your wards, but where should you exactly place them? The general answer is to place it where you expect the enemy will be. However, there are a few common ward spots that should serve you well depending on your role. Top lane, both teams ward the river bush to prevent ganks coming from the river. For the red team, ward the tri-bush just south of the tower to help you spot deeper ambushes. For mid laners, both teams, the south bushes of the river should always have wards. You can also place wards in the smaller bushes further down the river. This is because bronze, iron and maybe even silver junglers and sports will rarely place wards for you. For the jungler, as he roams around the map, place wards on bushes laners can cover at the moment. On the other hand, you can also place wards on common paths that the enemy jungler uses so you can know where he is at any given time. For the bot lane, it's the same as the top lane, but this time the blue team has the tri-bush. Supports can save a ward for the lane bushes to prevent the enemy laners from hiding in there or getting in lane ganked. Then we got Baron and Dragon Pits. For both teams, they are key areas that have to be warded before attempting to take their objectives. These key areas include the nearest tri-bush, the jungle entrances and the area behind the back wall of either pit. And with this we go to ward removal. Unless you're engaged in a fight, you should always destroy enemy wards you encounter. This way you deny the enemy team a valuable map information. Junglers and support players will usually change to sweeper lanes later in the game for this very purpose. Control wards are also great to deny the enemy team with precious map info. Aside from providing the vision for your team, a nullifier that also disables wards near it. While this type of ward is not invisible, it lasts until it is destroyed. And there are also some good places to place control wards because they are rarely checked and can give you good information. And since control wards last until they get destroyed, you can have a control ward throughout the entire game. Also, don't forget that if you really want to get out of lower elo, the quickest way to improve the game is to study the game. Thankfully, nowadays this is really easy with YouTube and Twitch. Nowadays you can check guides like this one and watch really good players play, which will increase your learning curve by a lot instead of just playing by yourself. And if you really are serious about improving, you can always get coaching sessions, which nowadays is very common to be seen and will help you even more as each coaching session is aimed and tailored just for you. Now with all of this in mind, it's time to pick the right champion. A lot of lower elo players get stuck there because they don't have the mechanical skills to get the most out of their champions. One of the most common examples is Raven. On paper, Raven can do a lot more raw damage than almost any other AD carry. However, you need to be good enough to keep catching those blades without putting yourself in a risky position. In lower elo, while you are still learning the game itself, you should use easier champions. If you do that, you can focus on your macro, you can focus on your gameplay, instead of having all your attention in those mechanical aspects and micro gameplay that still is too soon for you to actually focus on. When it comes to picking this easier champ per se, which doesn't mean weaker, you need to look for three things. First, the champ must have a kit that is easy to use. Second, you need a champ that provides a degree of safety so you can have enough room to make mistakes. Next, the champ must be able to remain a threat even if you fall behind. And if you are lost and don't know what champion you should use, here are 3 recommendations for each role that many players consider newbie friendly. Mid laners. If you enjoy playing mid lane, you're looking for AP range champions that can provide good lane pressure plus some good scaling damage or utility later. First one, Annie, one of the first champs in the game. Annie's passive ability is a targeted CC, providing excellent lane pressure on demand. Her Q provides her with guaranteed damage, while her W provides her with a wave clear. Her E is a defensive ability that's excellent for trading damage or helping surviving ganks. Sure, Tibbers requires a bit of micromanagement, but at lower elo, even just letting the big bear go on town will be enough for you to net your turret kill. Basically, playing Annie, you just want to hold on your passive CC to help to set up ganks and secure kills. Second, Lux. Lux is one of the first champions that you should consider if you want to get used to skill shots. You ask why? Because unlike many other skill shot based champions, Lux has plenty of range to make safer pokes. Plus, she has enough slow on her E and crowd control on her Q to disengage should somebody actually manage to get near her. Of course, her long-range ultimate also provides an excellent way to pick off escaping low-health targets. Her utility makes her so good that even without damage she remains a priority target during a teamfight. Unlocks: basically you use your E on enemies that you hit with your Q for excellent damage before finishing them off with your ultimate. The last one, and not the least, is Malzahar. Even in the hands of an unskilled player, Malzahar is a great damage dealer. His passive keeps him safe from ganks who initiate with crowd control, so you have time to escape. He has a low cooldown poke with his Q that's relatively easy to land. His W synergizes with his tendency to keep casting spell and provides extra damage and an additional lane pressure. His E is also a great form of harass, forcing the enemy champs to stay away from the minions line. Finally, his ultimate deals a ton of damage and pins down a high priority target during teamfights. Normally use your Q to poke and your W to keep enemies away from the minion lane, and use your voidlings to block the enemy's skill shots or push. Then we got top laners. Top laners normally are tanky or excel at taking on isolated targets, maybe both. In lower elo, top lane champs tend to focus more on survivability and pressure over sheer dueling potential. The first one, of course, is Garen, maybe the most newbie friendly for the top lane champions. Garen provides a good mix of offense and defense in a very straightforward kit. Press Q when you want to chase down a target or if you get hit by crowd control. Activate W before pressing for an attack or running away. Use your E for more damage or extra wave clear. Spin to win. R takes care of cleaning up survivors after a lane duel or a teamfight. His passive will also keep you fresh between trades, so you're almost always ready for a fight. With Garen, basically spin to win near the opponents and follow up with your Q. Watch for the symbol over the enemy head, that means they can be taken out with your ultimate. Second is Tahm Kench. Tahm Kench is one of the biggest lane bullies in lower divisions. With 3 stacks of his passive, you have a low cooldown CC that will keep most opponents at a disadvantage. His E ability is great for surviving burst damage from ganks while also keeping you from backing out too much. You can also save teammates or isolated enemies with his W. Last but not least, his ultimate is a great way to make sure that you always dare to contest objectives and participate in teamfights. With Tahm Kench, basically harass your enemies with Q. When you have 3 stacks on the enemy, keep them stunned with your Q and finish them off with your W. You should also learn to use W defensively to save your teammates. Last but not least, it's Nasus. Nasus is generally known as a late game monster, but he is not bad in the early game department either. Sure, his Q makes last hitting minions easier, but the real threat comes from his W, which is pretty much a low cooldown version of Summoner's Rift Exhaust. His E shreds armor and is great for clearing waves, and his R gives him survivability to take a lot of damage for the team. With Nasus, basically get used to last hitting with your Q and zone the enemy with your E, single out the enemy AD carry and weaken him with your E and W. Then we have the junglers. Jungle champions need mobility to gain control over the monster camp's objectives and lane. An effective jungler can set up inescapable ganks while also denying the opponent jungler the opportunity needed to provide lane pressure. First we have Amumu. Doesn't have much damage, but he does make up for it thanks to his ultimate and his passive. His W and E are fast enough to let him clear the jungle. His Q is mostly a tool for him to get in range for his other abilities, but the CC is a good bonus. Lastly, his R can be used to start a good team fight or to interrupt multiple enemies in the middle of one. Playing Amumu comes basically down to landing a good Q and hitting your ultimate, so get used to your skill shots. And second, we have Master E. If Amumu is all about utility, tankiness and slow steady damage, Master E is the polar opposite of that, favoring damage and burst damage at the cost of durability. His R guarantees that he can chase down targets from afar while resetting his Q after every kill. His E adds true damage to his already high damage per second. Playing E in lower elo is just a matter of activating your E and R using Q, then sweeping up the rest of the enemy team. His W is a self-heal that also increases his defense, but will mostly be used in sustaining his jungle clearing or recover after a gank. With E, basically pop your ultimate, pop your E, then go down with your Q and auto attack. Preferably when the enemy has blown their CC abilities. Your W can be used to tank a few hits, but be careful to not let the enemies surround you. Last and not least is Vi. Vi isn't as fast as Master E, but she also has good burst damage and also can tank a little bit. Learning her combo is fairly easy. Start with her Q, auto attack, E, and then another auto for a massive amount of damage. Her ultimate is a targeted ability, so initiation with it will guarantee most ganks will deal a lot of damage, if not outright kill a target. However, you can also use it at the last moment if you're not confident at landing your Q. Playing Vi is basically getting used to her combo and deciding if you should initiate with your ultimate or keep it to secure a last second kill. Now for the marksmen, also known as AD carries, are champions that normally have a single goal that is doing as much damage as possible. These champions are usually the most fragile members of the team, but they have the range to let them be effective from afar. The first one is Ashe. The first champion that most players will encounter. Ashe combines good offense with utility. Her Q enhances her auto attacks and is her main source of damage. Her W is mainly used for pokes and clearing minion waves. You also have some degree of safety with her E, since you can scout the river even without wards. And her ultimate is awesome if you manage to land it at long range, but in lower elos it will most likely be used to chase down escaping targets or to provide burst damage. When you play Ashe, basically activate your Q before starting a trade and harass with your W. Save your ultimate for setting up for enemies or catching up the runaway targets. The second one is Severe, a good example of a lane bully. With her Q and W she can force enemies to stay away from the minion wave or risk taking damage. Her E gives her a degree of safety when trading damage. Even her ultimate is designed to help her deal more damage with auto attacks while also giving the team a chance to press the offense. Despite being a lane bully, her stats scale good enough that she still is quite a contender when it reaches the late game. So you basically activate your W before engaging in a team fight and be prepared to block CC abilities with your E, poke with your Q and chase down the enemies with your ultimate. Last and not least is Caitlyn. Another example of a lane bully. First, her passive and her Q provides early burst damage and poke. Her W allows you to set up a danger zone in the lane where the enemies aren't safe. Her E works either as an escape or a slow to help your jungle or support catch up to the key target. If anybody manages to survive, you can kill them from afar with her ultimate, which is a targeted ability. The key thing to play Caitlyn is to get used to her passive so you have a harassing tool every 6 hits and learn how to use your E defensively. And then we have the supports that are all about keeping your teammates alive and making sure the other guys are dead. Loaded with crowd control abilities, healing or shields, the support champ doesn't rely on items as much as the other ones, so they can afford to give minion kills to the team's AD carry. The first one here is Sona. Many people consider Sona to be the Annie of support lane because of her easy kit to use. Her ultimate is the only skill shot that she has and is a very wide hitbox and provides great crowd control. Her poke is auto-targeted and most of her plays involve properly timing her power chord passive. She even has a low cooldown healing ability to help her and the AD carry stay in the lane longer. Her only weakness is that she's super squishy and has very limited mobility. The key on Sona is to properly time your power chord and learn to initiate with your ultimate. Second is Janna. Janna is one of the best examples of a safe champion. While her Q and her W will take some effort to use offensively, both are easier to land on chasing opponents. Her E is a typical shield buff that can help win trades or escape ganks. Last but not least, her ultimate can stop the enemy team from making well executed plays that will otherwise result in an ace. It heals your teammates, but it can also be used offensively to displace the enemies and with that make your team actually win a fight. The key to Janna is getting used to fast casting tornadoes and keep an eye out for when to shield. Learn to stop good plays with your ultimate and later on even learn how to make good plays yourself for your team with your ultimate. And to end the list is Morgana. If Janna is good for stopping the enemy plays, Morgana is great at making them. Her Q is one of the best CC abilities in the game. She has an AoE with her W that lets her zone out her opponents in the lane. You can use your E to help teammates engage without fear of getting disrupted by crowd control. And last and not least, her ultimate is a potent way to lock down the entire enemy team for your team's damage dealers. The key here is to constant pressure with your Q and W, keep your shield ready for enemy crowd control and learn how to flash ult properly. The road to silver and beyond is paved with many challenges, but they are anything but impossible. Just getting a good grip on the basics of the game will drastically increase your win rate, and with enough practice and a bit of patience, you'll soon find yourself blowing past those divisions. My name has been Zadarkus, and as always, I hope this guide will help you. Subscribe if you want more content like this, give it a like if you did enjoy, and leave a comment because I read everything. Can it be a question? I will answer. Do you have a suggestion? I will think about it. And if you just want to say I'm awesome, I appreciate it because dude or girl, you are awesome. So yeah, stay around because there's a lot more to come. My name is Zadarkus and this video was made for you. Bye bye.